Oh, wowee, Dr. Billy. That was a great episode. It was episode number 71, reflection episode on social skills. What are people going to learn this week?
Lots of gold from you this time. I think, you sharing your experience and how you approach stuff and think about it, and really great honesty and helpful strategies. And then, we go through a lot of stuff like kids who are struggling with their social skills. What's our role as parents when other kids are coming in? Like, what are specific challenges with certain age groups, boys versus girls, childcare, schools, lots of amazing stuff. And couple of emotional questions.
Oh, don't. Not a dry eye in the house midway through the longs. Didn't like it. Billy, you said I brought some gold. I'd probably say somewhere between bronze and silver is about where I'm at with some of these questions, but I do love putting you on the spot, and I'm going to start doing that more because you gave some absolute gems this week, and I think people are going to get a lot out of this reflection episode. I really mean that. I'm not trying to pump it up. I think it's a cracker. Tell you what else is also great, Billy. Spotify have started opening up reviews on specific episodes. So if you're a Spotify listener, doesn't matter if you're an iTunes listener, but if you're a Spotify listener, you can now review a single episode, and we love reviews. So if you're sitting here for the opening, or if you're starting to wrap up, please remember to leave us a little review. Helps us so much. So thank you so much, guys. I hope you enjoy the episode.
Hi, I'm Billy, a developmental paediatrician.
And I'm Nick, a developing parent.
We're going to use scenes from iconic movies to talk about how we best support our kids.
This is Pop Culture Parenting.
Hey, don't let your mother smell that beer on your breath. She'll take it out on me.
I don't want to see you again for the rest of my whole life. And I don't want to see anybody else either.
Who is your daddy and what does he do?
Just use your best judgment.
Good morning, Dr. Billy Garvey. How are you?
I'm good, Nick. I'm good. How's your fortnight been?
Wow, it's been sensational. I mean, lots of parenting opportunities as well, but my team have won a premiership in the Australian Rules Football League, so I'm very excited by that.
It's funny, I don't know if you saw it, but we'll talk about the amount of questions we got in, but one of them had a very great intro of like family stats.
Oh, yeah.
And said, this is how many kids I've got, and then said, my wife, who's also a child because she goes for Collingwood. And I thought,
very good.
That was very fun. Yes, but amazing, mate. We try not to be topical, but that's a challenge to the evergreen back catalogue.
It's hard. Yes, no, a very big weekend.
You were there with Henry.
I was
big
there.
game. How many fans
game.
screaming?
100,024 apparently.
Which is probably pretty interesting for overseas listeners. So slightly off topic, but that's a pretty big stadium internationally, isn't it?
Well, once again off topic, average attendance for sports teams around the planet this year, it has the highest average attendance.
Wow.
The second highest, behind a German soccer team
Yeah, okay.
called Borussia Dortmund.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mate, you're not just a parenting expert.
Nine. And that's it.
Yeah, amazing. So no, good week. And maybe we'll pause or park the reflection on how much we changed our own social skills support of kids following that, and lean into the what came back from listeners.
Yeah, there was a lot coming back from the listeners this week. Most questions in history again for the second month in a row, Billy.
Yeah. Yes. So, I went a night early thinking that would cover it. But at about 10 p.m. last night, mate, I almost sent you a message saying I think we're going to have to do 70 questions because that's as low as I can get it. But I promise I made a harder cut than that.
He does.
So
as I look at him.
Be a 4-hour episode.
No, this is not because we're going to be punchy today. But what we usually start with, Billy, is the responses to the polls. And we had 3 questions this week. First question was, did you ever struggle with social skills as a kid? 80% of people responded yes.
Dude, what did you respond?
No, I've never had, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's big family, lots of opportunities to socialise.
Yeah.
You know, fight. Fight for voice. Was very pro-social in my house. Just lots of big families around as well all the time. So no. How about you?
Yeah, I said yes. I think I still struggle with certain elements of social skills. Like, lots of, like, no questions came in about conflict, but I struggle with conflict and stuff like that. I'm also a very passionate friend. So so we won't, so no, the short answer is that yes, I definitely struggled with that, and I can still remember, and I think probably a lot of us can. And then, we'll talk about the next poll question and how that relates. But yeah, what was the next one?
Next one, Billy, is, do you ever feel lost helping your kid with social skills? I said yes. 90% of people did as well.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think that is this hard thing about, more people struggle with it as a parent. And I think a lot of it reflects on either the experience you had, if you're the 80%, or you remembered kids who struggled socially and the impact it had on them. So, it's a really important thing. And as I talked about previously, it's kind of the second or maybe the third, if you think about safety, important role that we have in supporting our kids' development is helping them with social skills. And we'll talk about it in real depth through some of these questions. Third poll question.
And arguably the most important one. Who should play Danny in the reflection episode?
So I knew I was taking a risk with this question, and in hindsight, it was a mistake.
60% of people said Nick.
Yeah, and completely unrelated, this is the last episode of the podcast.
Billy, I think this is because my passion for it. Frankly, you don't deserve it. You spoke your truth last week about how much you didn't love this film, and I spoke my truth about how I said it's my favourite film of all time in the part 1 episode. Bit of a plug for part 1. Go back and listen to it if you haven't listened to it. And I think I deserve Danny. I deserve to choose, as long as someone doesn't say Frenchie.
Yes. Although my favourite character in the movie, but no, I was more thinking about just that Photoshop. Because I think I'm going to use that last photo from the poll. Not sure what I look like with a perm and in tight leather, but we're about to find out. Well, people will have seen by now because it's going to be out when this comes out.
It sure will be. Billy, we're going to punch into the short questions. Yeah. This is your sweet spot, short questions, because you're very concise with answering them.
Well, I'll try and do the same with the longs, but
I'm building capability in your skills.
Amazing.
Okay, Billy. First question. It feels like I'm in sale of the century. First question. How can I help my 12-month-old build on her social skills? Is it mainly modelling behaviour?
Yeah, so I think I overemphasize in a lot of the back catalogue role modelling. It's really powerful, but it's not the only role. So it's really great this person's starting from that. But social skills are actually, like we talked about last time, they're just built in interacting with people. Like we're all social beings and we exist in social relationships. Some of us are vulnerable, and we'll talk about that a bit more later. But it's actually just interacting with them, especially in moments when they're not dysregulated. I think the hardest thing as a parent is you're like so overwhelmed with your own stuff and all these amazing, the hundreds of things we need to achieve in a day, that when kids are calm is a bit of a vulnerability that we don't interact with them much. But that's actually where they develop all the social skills of like
when it's calm,
just communicating, nonverbal relationships, empathy. We'll talk about all that a bit more. So it's just by interacting with people. And also I think especially as kids get older, I'm gently starting to do this with Evie now, is, the explanation behind it all. Like why, and we'll talk about sorry and empathy and all those things.
Yeah, we talk about that later in the long questions. So definitely hang around. There's a great long question around apology.
Yes, great. Yeah, it was a great one, wasn't it? But yeah, so I think it's a really important thing that role modelling is helpful, but it's also just through engaging with them and giving them opportunities and supporting them and all that stuff.
Okay. Number 2, hubby and I are not particularly social people. Is our child doomed to copy us?
Yeah, what do you think about that?
I'm
from two very extroverted parents.
Yeah, I'm just not in the spot. I can see the challenge. There's an amazing Bluey episode around this, actually, around a dad who's not great with imaginative play and a kid. It's kind of similar, like he's just quite introverted father, and they talk about it. We shouldn't just point people to Bluey. Let's get the response from you though, Billy. But I think maybe it's going to be a challenge here, but.
I think it can be, but I think what's really important is that you play into your strengths as a parent, and we should do a future topic on parenting styles because it's a really important one, but you play into your strengths, and it's more about just being comfortable with who you are, I think, and role modelling that to kids, and instead of like trying to conform to some expectation, because the risk is that then the kid thinks they need to do that as well. We've got a great long on kids that are less social later. But yeah, I don't think so. I don't think that kids are doomed if you're less kind of social.
Yeah, sorry. When I said like challenge, I didn't mean for the kids. I mean, parents might find it a bit trickier, but kids, no. Kids are malleable.
Yeah, exactly. It's, it'll be interesting because Evie's very similar to me, but if Charlie isn't, it's important that I don't expect him to be like me.
Expectations bad.
Yeah.
It can be tough. Hey, Billy, how do you help a 3-year-old interact with other kids?
Yeah, great question. The reason this made the cut is because it's right in that pocket of when they'll start interacting with other kids, and you must see this with the gorgeous Ronnie.
When they move on from parallel play where they play next to each other, Billy, to engaging with one another when they're at the Lego desk.
Wow, that's a highlight, Charlie. but yeah, it is. It's true, isn't it? But what is that? How have you found supporting Ronnie with that?
Pretty good. Like what I love is probably promoting when they call out, "Oh, that's my best friend."
Yeah.
So I reckon the last 2 weeks she's just been saying Sully's my best friend to the parents and saying it to us. And I'm like, oh, why is he your best friend? And it's not like a hefty response. One, well, Dad, it's more like he's just my best friend and you need to know that is what she says.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
beautiful.
okay, I need to know and I now know. Thank you. I'm not going to argue. And that's really nice. So, it's fascinating watching how they switch from playing next to each other though to playing with each other, and I really like watching that. And just lots of opportunities like play dates. So play dates and parks, just get them out as much as you can. And I think one of the things you sort of taught me was like playing together is not just time together. So like watching TV, they're not actually engaging with each other next to each other. But if you whack them on the trampoline or turn the TV off and tell them they've got to make bridges between the couches, that's the good stuff. So try and do that. Now, I don't try and do that all the time.
Oh, no.
Because friends will be listening to this going, oh, do you, mate? Is that what you're always doing at home? When I come over and the kids are just there watching the TV, like this is going. So no, but when I get a spark of energy, I often try and use it.
No, to be fair to you though, the trampoline gets used a lot, but I think appropriately, like you know, you do use screens, and it's great because it's just a different skill development set. And yeah, I agree with you. Opportunity, watch how they're going. Scaffold success is the key. Short bursts of success. That's how you help a 3-year-old, and you have an expectation that they will start having early skill development with their peers. The 18-month-old will snatch stuff. The 3-year-old should start to be thinking about asking to take their turn. Or can they have a shot at the game or whatever it is? Yeah,
and Billy, I wouldn't be a central figure in a 70s, 80s and 90s movie reflection podcast if I didn't have a lot of screen time in the 80s. So I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe that's the secret ingredient.
Billy, how to balance teaching social etiquette versus caring too much what other people think? Oh, ripper.
Great question. And I really struggle with this. You and Annalise have helped me a lot with this in the context of trying, to make this podcast valuable, but not hanging like my identity on whether it, is well received or not. And I think I'm like that socially as well because, and that's one of the risks of empathy. We'll talk about empathy later, is that there's vulnerability in empathy that you take on too much weight of the other people's experience, or you will kind of avoid it a bit because it's overwhelming. So we'll talk about empathy versus compassion. But yeah, I struggle with this. So social etiquette, the key is there's purpose behind it. And we actually role model it, but we also we've demonstrated with our kids, not just to other strangers and go, see, I said thank you. We say thank you to them as well.
Gotcha.
And the vulnerability is that your kids who are taking too much on and being, struggling with it emotionally, it's really important to focus on that and then put some energy towards it. And that kind of goes back to the self-esteem episode. So not to spend too much time on a short.
You love that self-esteem episode, don't you?
Yeah, well, it's an amazing movie.
Yeah, it is.
Big emotional.
It is. It is an amazing movie. Anyway, and for those of you that can hear the jingle jangle of the ice cubes in my drink as I drink, apologies. It's not a Scotch and Coke, by the way. It's just an iced coffee. So just in case people were wondering, because I just realised when I had a sip then. Apologies, Billy.
It's okay.
Quite distracting. Billy. I've just seen the question. Were both of you always cool, or is it a skill you work on?
Great question. And yeah, a bit of assumption there, but no, I think it's an important one. I want to do one kids that are cool, but it is this kind of vulnerability that we have in society, that expectation to be cool. But the actual answer is that I don't think either of us have ever been accused of being cool.
I don't think so ever. I don't think so ever. Ever.
No, well, mate, I think you're pretty cool.
I'm just going back to the start. I'm trying to find out, was there a time? I'm like, no. Anyway, short walk down memory lane there. Hey, Billy, how can we support our kids when they are drawn into others' friendship dramas? Whoa.
Yeah, great question.
It feels like an older kid question.
Well, no. So you'll see this start to come in primary school. So for a lot of kids, yeah. We'll talk about boys versus girls in in the line of the longs. But yeah, I think that it's really important that we always go non-judgmentally into those conversations and protect the dialogue, protect the conversation pathway. So that's what's really important, because if you kind of dismiss it, or if you give them instructions straight away, or that's ridiculous, or go back and say this or do that, you risk that pathway gets blocked, and a lot of that drama can become quite serious and involve risk taking in later teens and all that stuff. So that's how you support them. Make sure the first step is always, I'm here
All
to
right.
listen.
I'm going to put you on the spot as a man that doesn't have like an older kid at school with this sort of stuff yet, but I'm going to ask you because you're an expert.
Yeah, give it to me.
Evie comes to you and she's got like, there's a trio and they're best mates, right? Mm-hmm. But two of the best mates are blowing up and say they now hate each other. And she's being drawn in to pick sides. Dad, the girls are telling me I have to pick a side or pick a team, or like I can't be friends with both of them anymore.
Yeah.
I'll play Evie. Dad, Casey and Shan are saying, yeah, I don't know any Caseys or Shans. Casey or Shan aren't friends anymore, and they're telling me I've got to choose which friend I've got to be friends with now because I can't be friends with both of them.
Yeah.
And they won't be my friend. What do I do?
So first step is not what I'm about to say back. It's about like, what setting am I in? Do I have time and capacity? Can I make the space a bit more open for an opportunity, and ideally go and find somewhere to sit down and go, she's trying to connect with me. Let's do that. So I try really hard to not just answer straight away, but go to that and look around. If I'm in a place where I feel like that's all set up really well, then I would just really open-ended questions. I just want to get as much information and also validate her concerns, try and see where she's coming from, and just collect heaps of info, say it back to her, is this what's going on? And then what do you think we should do about it? God. And then explore it with her and just think, and, you know, and try and, we'll talk about, there's an amazing last question.
Great.
But think about what skill am I trying to give her in this moment? And the answer to that will come right at the end, just to... Okay. We don't have any ads. I don't know why we're always trying to get people to listen to the end. but yeah.
Okay, thank you. Great one, Billy. That's why you're very good. Billy, have I ruined my kids by being shy myself at kids' parties when I'm with him? Oh,
great question. Do you know, I try really hard, like, and this was at a recent birthday party of your kids.
Yeah.
I try really hard not to crowd Evie in those environments. So I have to work to be a bit more shy, if that makes sense. Because I think the risk of like coming in and being the like, you know, gregarious, a party animal, I'm here, everyone's, is that you just overshadow the kid.
Yeah, especially at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning, Billy.
Yeah. And so I think that there's no risk in that. And it's just really important that you're there to support and scaffold the kid. And there was lots of questions that unfortunately couldn't come in about like, I'm not that social, I don't socialise in front of my kids and all that stuff. But our role is to watch our kids, and there's lots of different ways. You don't role model it perfectly by being the life of the party, you know, and it's important that kids see a diversity of role models, not just the person who's amazing at it and everyone talks to and all that stuff. So I don't think there's any risk in that. I think it's probably a good, protective, safe way to approach it.
Okay. Is showing off a lack of a social skill?
Great question. And what do you think?
No, I hope not.
No, the answer is it can be. Once again, there's a later long, but no one's going to be surprised to hear this. I was a massive show off, and I still am. I used to like put on performances, you know, and dress ups and make all my mum's friends like watch me do a show and all this stuff. Yep. And I was still like that. I got in a lot of trouble in high school probably because of that. And that's where the question comes in terms of function. And so we want to think about how it impacts function. And I saw a kid the other day who we started on medication for ADHD. And I always ask, like, what's the bit that's helpful for you? Because it has to be helpful for the kid. And he was like, he had this perfect description. He's like, I've noticed that at school, like in the classroom, when my mates are stuffing around, I'll think of something funny to say. And because of the medication, I can stop myself and say it later. And I was like, that is a beautiful description of how the medication is helping me and that impulsivity. But, you know, so I don't think showing off, it's just making sure that it's not dysfunctional. It's not impacting their social relationships, their ability to be in a group, their ability to give others space to, you know, be seen and all that kind of stuff.
So can be, but if it can be managed.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Billy, how do you help your kids stand up for themselves and recognise they are being led or easily influenced?
Yeah, so really hard. It goes back a little bit to the same as like just open dialogue and all of that stuff. But I think sometimes we can make questions about like, you know, what do you think's behind that? How do you think, you know, someone else would be feeling if they're in your shoes and kind of stuff like that. The younger kids, it's hard because you've got to kind of protect them a bit more and that more of that management role. But as we shift into teenage years, there is a social skill in understanding sometimes that others won't have the best intentions. So how do we give them that skill to have a bit of a radar for that and to be able to think about that and the impact, and having that, once again, that self-esteem to say, hey, I shouldn't be dealing with that, or that's not an expectation that someone treats me that way or puts me in risk, or things like that.
Okay. Yep. Also love that, heavy management early. A little bit of a consult later.
Yes. Yeah, that's what we're all aiming for.
Spot on. Billy, worried about the negatives for both gently pushing into situations and giving space?
Yeah, so that's the other big sweet spot that you need to think about. And I really like how the person says gently pushing. So I think what that question means is they're a bit, say, shy or reluctant to engage socially, but I know that it's a really important thing for them. But I think, we need to be careful as well. And that's where we think about kids from an emotional dysregulation bit. Once they become dysregulated, we stop pushing, no matter how gentle it is.
Yep.
So just watch them. And the key is you want to gently, it's almost like, it's a silly analogy, but the inertia of the seatbelt. You want to gently extend it, but the moment you get some significant resistance, it's just time to pause and go, sweet, connect with you, help you calm down.
Yep.
Validate your experience and all that stuff, and then think about gentle extensions. And the researchers would, the theory around that is it's called zone of proximal development. I think we've spoken about it before, but just on the edge, how do we find that sweet spot of them just extending themselves with support?
Okay. Thank you. Billy, how to support shyness and sensitive emotions when playing with other kids?
Yeah, so really gently. There's really strong research on this that kids who have a sensitive temperament need to have really gentle, responsive parenting, really warm, gentle, responsive parenting. They're the kids who are the most vulnerable to kind of harsh parenting that dismisses their feelings. So those sensitive kids really need, when you're helping them engage in social situations, that you are really conscious of what's going on for them and you kind of overplay it and be led by them.
And we've got an episode on sensitive kids.
Yes. Yeah, that's one people seem to really like going back to.
Yep, for sure. Billy, oh wow, this is an interesting question. Hey, should Nick be recast as a tired old Danny Zuko? Who should play Sandy?
And who's... Obviously, Henry's your first choice, but who's your second?
Well, if I can play Danny Zuko with ginger curly hair,
Yeah.
I think anybody could play Sandy.
Yeah, who's there?
Oh, well, Henrietta would make a great Sandy.
Of course.
I think that's
Imagine
it.
she wasn't available.
Wow, if she was cast into another role in another film, I mean, who else could be there? Probably someone of similar age to me, Billy.
Quite young.
And I don't think there's anyone in Hollywood that looks as tired as me. Who would be similar to me? Or who can dance? Cameron Diaz can dance, can't she? She danced in, what was it, Charlie's Angels? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, okay. Throwback.
There
We'll
we
have to
go.
do one of her movies.
Yeah.
I think we put some parenting into...
a Cameron Diaz film.
Yeah, something about Mary.
Find some parenting for that. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, Billy. How do you teach empathy? I know that modelling is always great, but is there more to it?
Yeah, great question. And we role model it, but we actually need to demonstrate empathy to kids. So we often have an expectation that kids will demonstrate empathy themselves, but we need to show them empathy. And there's really great research that if you have a parent who has empathy in the way they interact with a child, that child is more likely to demonstrate empathy. Does that make sense?
That theory makes sense. I'm going to put you on the spot because I love to do it. How can I demonstrate empathy?
So you show a kid that you understand their perspective and their experience when they're struggling, what's going on for them, especially when it conflicts with what you're trying to get done. You know, I'm really sorry you feel that way, all of that stuff. That is empathy. What empathy is understanding the experience and having an emotional connection to what's occurring for someone else.
Gotcha.
So we have an expectation that kids will start learning that, especially as they enter primary school.
Yeah.
But we show them and role model that to others, but more importantly, we do it in the way that we interact with them. So with Evie, I need to show her that. She just got really upset this morning. We were all on the bed and, you know, she went to touch and pat Charlie's hair. It was my fault because we were talking about what colour's hair everyone is. And she just went to pat Charlie and we kind of went, oh, don't wake him. And she got upset and cried. And that was a moment for me to demonstrate empathy for her. In my head, I was like, hey, you're overreacting. But I went, no, she's not. She's just upset and I can connect with her here and show empathy. Now, the step from empathy to compassion is a really important one that we often get lost. We often talk about empathy, but as we've said, there's a vulnerability in empathy that you take on the emotional weight. And a lot of kids who might be neurodiverse will have challenges with that. The step of compassion is it goes into action and it's really purposeful. A lot of people would say empathy is kind of almost a subconscious. It's a feeling that you have when you see someone, say, experiencing hardship. Compassion is thinking about what can I do to help them. It goes from me and my feelings of empathy is that, oh, I feel bad because that person's having a bad experience. Compassion is how can I be helpful? And so that's a really important differentiation. And I had this beautiful moment in clinic last week where this mum had a child who was anxious and meeting me for the first time. And this kid was giving me answers but not looking me in the eyes. And mum was like, look in Billy's eyes. And I was like, that's a bit harsh. But then before I said anything or tried to do anything, she's like, the kid did. And she's like, see, that helps Billy connect with you and understand how you're feeling. That's why it's really helpful to look in people's eyes. And I was like, beautiful. Has explained it in the moment, given the kid support, demonstrated it, and then reinforced it when it succeeded.
Lucky you gave them space to do the explanation, Billy.
Yes, that's true. It's one of my biggest struggles to do. But I'm getting better at giving space.
Hey, bull dust. That's not true. Hey, Billy, at what point do you need professional help or diagnosis if a kid is socially struggling?
Yeah, so this is a really good question. And we talk about this a lot. I've just been doing some stuff with early child care educators about when is the point that you bring in like an external assessment or support or specialist like myself. And it's when after a couple of weeks to months, you see that despite trying to help, the kid is still struggling. And that's when you should bring in support. We know a lot of parents and professionals will hold on this stuff, but a kid should be succeeding successfully socially at the developmental level that they're at. And if they're not, and you give them support for kind of weeks to a couple of months and they're still struggling, that's the time to bring in help.
And this is, when you say developmentally on milestone or benchmarks, or I think you just said something like that, is this stuff easy to find?
Well, this is what we're trying to talk about. Like, I try to think about different formats for this, but there's a really I don't have time for it now because I don't want to. I don't want to flood it. But we've got to think about how to do this. With the childcare professionals that I've been working with, we just step through all the developmental realms that exist from 1 to 6, and kind of when those are all the different areas. And people don't. The biggest mistake that we make in developmental pediatrics, and I've said this before, is we go, you're 7, you should be able to share and interact with other kids now, but the kid might actually be at a typical 3-year-old's level, and that's what we need to go to. So you go back, support them, and try and structure them on that stuff. Cool, you don't understand the non-verbal body language stuff, I'm going to support you with that.
Gotcha.
And then after a couple of months, if they're still really struggling with that, that's the time to call in for help.
Yep, gotcha. All right. Hey, Billy, is it concerning my 16-year-old likes to play by himself? Is that an example of just parallel play, or is this normal?
What do you think?
I think it's totally normal.
Yeah, totally.
Only because we talked about parallel play before.
Yeah.
I
was going to give that one to you anyway.
Thank you.
But,
you shouldn't give this person
they're right. That's completely developmentally appropriate for a 16-month-old, and a lot of 2.5-year-olds will still be doing that.
Anyway, that's what I have seen, and I've only paid attention to it because we've been going through transition from like the toddler room to pre-K, pre-kinder room. So I've sort of seen like you can sort of spot the parallel, and then just watching them then. And then you see the photos, like Kindy does a little photo wrap some days where you see the kids and you start seeing them play together as opposed to next to each other around the kind of table. Anyway.
Yeah, beautiful. No, it's exactly right.
Billy, we're into long questions. Now, I love long questions, a lot of detail in here and gets a lot of context, and you give a lot of perspective in your answers, so it's very good. So here we go. Question number 1. I think we have 13 questions today, Billy.
Maybe 14.
14. 14. It's 14. Sorry, I just remembered. You got me. Billy. Nick and Dr. Billy, a.k.a. the Goats. I'm a mum of a boisterous and bubbly but sensitive 2.5-year-old boy and 6-month-old baby girl. I'm hoping for some advice to help my 2.5-year-old boy, 2.5-year-old boy with his social skills, or rather, to stop him getting repeatedly rejected. He used to go to a home-based daycare which closed suddenly, and he's been at home with me and his 6-month-old baby's sister. I guess his language may be a bit more advanced than other kids his age, so the playground and playgroups can be a challenge for him. He often finds that kids his own age don't talk back to him much, and he'd like that as much as he'd like, and so constantly approaching older kids and adults for company. He's an amiable and chatty little chap, and he'll approach anyone with a "Hello, my name is," insert name, "let's be friends, what's your name?" Sadly, most kids his age don't respond. Most older kids say, "Go away, baby, leave us alone." And most adults ignore him. The other day he climbed to the top of the slide and screamed to the whole playground, "I need somebody to talk to me." And it just broke my heart. I do my best to find him play dates and my own adult friends who play with him, and overall he does okay. But how can I support him with his playground and playgroup friend searches? I don't want to discourage him from approaching older kids, adults, but I do worry that the repeated rejections troubled him, and he often tells me that he feels sad because nobody wants to play with him. I also don't know how to encourage him to play with a child his own age, as he often loses interest or gets frustrated at the lack of conversation. I'm aware he's of an age which socialising outside of his family is becoming really important, and I worry that the playground rejections will damage his sensitive soul. There aren't any daycare places anytime soon, so he'll be home with me until we move cities in 3 months, which he will start in the new daycare. While we will be travelling for a lot of this time, I'd like to help him have more positive playground experiences, as he tries so hard but often ends up playing alone. Any advice is appreciated. I'd be heartbroken if his outgoing nature gets squashed by this time away from daycare.
I know when I read the top of the playground and I need someone to talk to me or play with me a bit, I was like, oh God. So great. The reason this made the cut is it's a beautiful demonstration of developmental asymmetry. And I hate using big words, but what I mean is that this kid's probably in the top 1% of kids in language abilities. Yeah. And so as a 2.5-year-old, and he's just leaning into it completely. So that's why he wants to be with older kids, but they don't want to be with him because he's probably missing all of the other developmental aspects at that level.
Yep.
And the mum is beautifully realising that she needs to get him playing with same age kids, and so what she needs to work on is all his non-language skills. And so he's got to learn the ways to communicate and interact with same age peers that aren't heavily reliant on language, because that's the wall he's hitting. It's like he's really good at one thing, and so he wants to do that one thing all the time, and it's probably appropriately being really reinforced in lots of his interactions, so he feels really great about how good his language is, but that's the reason he's hitting the wall.
Gotcha.
Because he can talk at the level of older kids, but he can't do all the other stuff, so they're going, go away, baby. So what we want to do is go, cool, we need to get him with same age peers, and you just wanted to try and help him not use language. So how do you get him to go? Well, so you instruct him and support him and guide him, prep him into it. We're going into this playground. Hey, let's just see if we can just run around with these kids and like have games with them and kick the ball and do those swings and do the ladders and interact. And any time, that he goes and looks like he's struggling because he's relying heavily on language, we just have a cue that we support him back. And go, hey, remember we were working on all that other stuff.
Yeah.
And then guide them and support them. Because that's why this kid it's a beautiful example of like a kid and we all have developmental asymmetry, but that kid's probably in the top 1% of language.
Yeah. Can I add something here? Can I ask a question here?
Of course.
Could you introduce more structured play with other kids? My suggestion, I had one kid that was really good verbally, like really strong. And I used to say,
she still is.
I used to say to you, be like, oh, Billy, I think, like we've got someone that's, I was like, should we go to men's?
Totally.
No, and you were really great about it. We talked about it. And what I think was great was, because people would say to us constantly, oh my God, she's so smart. She's so smart. And we were like, oh, wow, she must be really smart. And she's really bright and all those things. But what was interesting was you're like, no, it was like verbally, she just had really strong verbal skills, and that's what she'd worked on for whatever reason. And, I think it was that thing, she just seemed a lot older and ready, whatever. I don't know, I'm getting a bit lost here. But my point was, I think what we did was like introducing her to like structured play with kids her age. And what I mean is like going to like the library, our local library would have like crafts. So like the kids her own age would be playing the crafts sort of together. So she'd be with them crafting and doing things with them. So it's kind of like channeling it, because the playground can be a wild place.
Yeah,
like,
it's hard to do.
It's
on a
hard to get a
playground,
kid to 2.5-year-old to sit and play certain ways, but if you give them an actual task with other kids.
Yeah,
Anyway.
it's really important.
I got there.
No, it's a beautiful example because, I remember that. And she's still really strong with that. But we've got to remember we can't make the bar that they need to jump over at the height of their greatest strength. And then all the other things is what we're expecting them to be able to do, because the kids will often, like, for example, will be really struggle with non-verbal stuff.
Yeah.
And they just constantly hit a wall and feel crummy about themselves and don't succeed. So it's just a good example of, like, give that child support to develop non-verbal skills of social interaction.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. That was a good answer by you. Hey, Nick and Billy. What is the science around social skills development in boys versus girls? In my sample of 2, Miss 5 has developed far quicker than Mr. 7, specifically with manners, spontaneous please and thank yous. Being a good sport, saying well done or good game, and being kind to others, not calling names or laughing when someone hurts themselves. Note this behaviour is directed at the siblings. Have you got a reframe to help parents not come down too hard on their boys when they just don't seem to be getting it?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, the evidence is really interesting on this, and girls often do develop earlier, more complex social skills.
Gotcha.
Certainly around what this parent's been talking about. Do you know the only time boys are more likely to demonstrate pro-social behaviour than girls? It'd probably be amazing if you did guess it. But when other people are watching. So it's really interesting to think about that. And I think it comes into, once again, one of the differences between boys and girls may be more likely to be a bit shy. But it's quite funny to think about, like, in public with other people watching, boys are more likely in research studies that observe them to demonstrate pro-social behaviour than girls. It's about the only example. Like, a lot of other examples being altruistic. There's even one where it's like a girl is more likely to say that we should help get a cat out of a tree than a boy. Like, there's all different ways that people have looked at this. Now, the beautiful part of this question is, how can we reframe it? And I've, unintentionally got this beautiful opportunity now, having a girl and a boy. And I remember having a girl, you probably feel like this. You do want to push back against that kind of societal expectation that they'll be a certain way because they're a girl. And, I make a really big effort with Evie with that. She's like rough and tumble play. Like, people come over sometimes and she's just like throwing dirt in her hair and all this stuff. And they'll come over sometimes with other girls and they're just like, wow, this kid's wild. But I celebrate that about her, because if she was a boy, no one would have a problem with it. Everyone would be like, that's great. She loves doing all that stuff, running around and being crazy. But I have the same challenge with Charlie now, but in the reverse order, where I need to be really careful. Now, he's really young, but a bit of it at the start is the language. So I will talk about Charlie as how beautiful and gorgeous he is, because I think you've got to be careful that we say that about girls and we don't say it about boys. So I think that's the constant challenge of us, all of us in society, is how to be different, because there is no clear evidence of whether it is a difference in the genetics of boys versus girls, or it is the way that society sets them up.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We have an expectation that girls will be a certain way from a young age, and that's why they're more likely to share, and boys will be a certain way, and that's why they might be less likely or develop it later. It's, it's not clear it's a genetic thing.
It's not clear.
What we can change is the environment and the way that we are around them as a whole societal level, but I can do it with the way that I make sure that I don't be different to Charlie than I was with Evie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So sorry, long answer.
No, great.
Question.
No, I loved it. It was a great question. Hey, boys. Firstly, thank you for all that you do. Secondly, it will make my year if you read my question out loud on the show, Nick, even if you butcher the delivery. Your words, not mine. I have a little boy who just turned 3 and a 15-month-old girl. My little boy is a wicked little fella, and we love him to death. He has always been fiercely independent. On the playground, he will happily do his own thing and will not seek out other kids to interact with. If they try to interact with him, he becomes quite anxious. At times, it seems like he genuinely dislikes being around other kids his own age. He prefers slightly older kids and has always hated babies, younger than 12 months. It has been challenging to foster a relationship between him and my younger daughter. It has only been recently that he started to include her in some of his play, and is still very limited. He still tells her to get away from him most of the day. However, he has started to be more considerate of her lately and will give her some affection. I myself am an occupational therapist, but not a paediatric one. I don't believe he's neurodivergent, and he seems to be typically developing. He meets all the other milestones, is cuddly and affectionate with family, has good manners with adults, and has no emotional concerns. Normal emotional regulation of a 3-year-old. My question is, how do I get him to practice his social skills and develop relationships when he is uninterested in socialising? It's tricky parenting a more introverted child when I'm an extrovert. Any advice would be great. Thanks, fellas. I read that beautifully until the end. Sorry for butchering your question.
In your defence, you first see these questions at like an hour before we start recording. So
I always practice them.
Yeah,
I've gotten a lot better. I've gotten a lot better. If you go back to those early recordings of part 2, they were so bad. I was so nervous. Now I just I find a character in my voice.
No, so I just thought that was very funny. But yeah, great question. So once again, we go back to function. So how is this kid going? Because if he's functioning okay and it's just his temperament, we do not want to change him. We need to be really careful with introverted or shy kids that we don't expect them to be a different person because it challenges their self-esteem and there's a lot of risk in that. The thing, I think we did it on a previous episode, but the younger kid is often a challenge to their identity. And so, that's kind of normal stuff. And you just be gentle and keep giving opportunities for
Siblings
him to interact.
episode.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, yeah, that's right. Legends of the Fall.
That's right.
But, yeah. Tristan, we go. Take me back.
Tristan.
Tristan. So now if there is an anxiety component to it, which it sounds like there is a little bit, like he's getting a bit stressed when other people are coming over, it's important that we respond to that. But we, once again, don't try and help him develop skills when he's completely dysregulated. But when he's at a lower level, we want to come in and really help him remain calm when those other kids try and interact with him and have really short bursts of successful interactions and watch him. And if he's struggling at it, why is he struggling, and address that need before we like push him back in and go, mate, you're doing it. You've got to get used to being, kids being around you. So it might be lots of different things that we've talked about in the previous ep that are really important in social skills, but what is the specific thing? That's the challenge of it. It's not like being with friends or socializing. It's what's the specific thing that he's struggling with and how do we help him develop that skill?
So every time you do this, you always come up with something and the whole you shouldn't just push him back in and go, mate, this is what's happening right now. I'm like, oh, God, I've used that language less than 12 hours ago.
No, but it's fine. It's just not helpful for skill development.
Hey, mate, we're at the pub. We've just ordered music. This is where we are right now. You just got to get in your play. I'm like, oh, God damn it. Anyway, hey, Billy and Nick, possibly your biggest fan, love everything you talk about, particularly the way you uplift and encourage one another so easily. I'm a mum of beautiful, just turned 2-year-old and an educational assistant at an all-boys school. I have 2 questions that go across both roles I have. My first question is regarding my 2-year-old son. He's begun hitting very often. It almost always is paired with go away. He hits when he is upset or frustrated, but also seems to hit when excited. An example would be when seeing his godparents arrive. He beams and races to see them, and when he reaches them and swinging an arm and a go away, he races to them. When he reaches them, the swinging arm and a go away are what follows. He almost always does it when we arrive and Dad is there to greet us. Recently, his daycare educators have noted that he will hit or push the other children who are hitting another child. I think to stand up for them. When we read books and a character does the wrong thing, he always hits the character in the book. We have many conversations about kind hands and how hitting makes us feel. I give him other options, like telling him, instead of hitting when someone is doing the wrong thing, you can say, please stop, I don't like that, etc. I think I tend to have too high expectations, so I guess I'm just wondering what strategies could be best to help him with his antisocial behaviour. In my role as an education assistant, I work with multiple boys in middle school, ages 11 to 14. It's the most incredible job working one-to-one with boys at this age range as they transform so much. I have the privilege of working with a boy who has autism. He is incredible, so polite, creative and brilliant. Sometimes when we're talking, and particularly when he's excited about a topic, he gets very close, like millimetres apart. I know it's just out of his excitement, so I generally just let it happen and create normal space between us when there is a pause. I often wonder if it's my responsibility to have a conversation with him about it. Not because it bothers me. I'm happy to make allowances for others, but I have seen him do it with other boys. They seem uncomfortable when it happens. And I know it is a goal for him to make more friendships. I think invading personal space is an antisocial behaviour to some degree, but also is it me thinking he needs to change to fit in? Would love your thoughts around this one. Thanks again for all that you do.
Amazing question. God, the best thing about this podcast is the questions that come in.
Part
So phenomenal. So let's talk about them in two ways. The first one, the boy that's like hitting when he's excited and hitting the bad characters in books and stuff. So hitting, we've got another question about hitting where I'll be more specific about how you can address it. But it's one of the most difficult things to not unintentionally reinforce. And I'll talk about why, because kind of a lot of the time we know everything we give attention to means that it's more likely to happen again, regardless of what it is. Because we can't expect a kid, especially at this age, to be like, oh, but this is bad. I shouldn't do it. Okay. They're just going, this happens. I get attention. Now he's doing it by the sounds of it, just because that's a way that his outlet of excitement. Because you know what I mean? When the godparents or when dad's home, he gets really excited. So what you want to do is just think about what's a really close to what he's already doing, but a less kind of destructive or negative way to express his excitement. You know, and you would address the hitting bit before the go away bit, because the go away bit is fine. That's just the kind of him being excited. And Evie will do this sometimes with me. She'll get really excited and she's like, go away. Or she's just like, I'm really scared when she knows I'm coming home and she can hear me in the house. Yeah. You know, it's just an excitement that then struggling how to deal with that really big emotion. Yeah. You know, and that's just, And so it's really about what's a physical outlet like that. You know, and it can be anything. It can be clapping. It can be doing anything like that. But what's a way to demonstrate how excited we are and have an outlet that is kind of slightly deviating from what's already happening. Gotcha. So it's a really important bit of it. But hitting is going to come later, just in case people think that I'm not giving that the attention it deserves, because there's questions about it. It's okay. The second part is a beautiful question, because what she's trying to figure out is what is the role in this kid changing, or, you know, just everyone accepting what he's like. Now, we've got another question later on neurodiversity, which we'll talk about. But what this educational assistant is saying is that this kid is trying to make friends, and she's identified that this might be one of the elements that he's struggling with, just getting excited and going millimetres away from other people. And other people will struggle with that.
Have you seen this before? Kids come in really close. They just come in? I'm trying to picture it. They just come in really close, face to face.
Right up, almost nose to nose. Just especially when excited, especially when they're enjoying and connecting with you. And like, there's a lot of it is society says, oh, you can't do that. But the hard thing is, if this means that this kid's not connecting with other peers, and it's gonna a bit of it is like, we all need to get better at this stuff, and I'll talk about that more. Yeah. But the beautiful thing about this opportunity is I would go, if I was this educational assistant, I would be like, this kid wants to make friends. I'm observing that this happens, and then it will mean that friendships struggle a bit to succeed. I would talk to primary caregivers and go, hey, you know, you can tell this professional is a phenomenally positive part of this kid's life. Yeah. Hey, what do you reckon? I think that this is happening. I can see that he wants to be friends with other people and all this stuff, and have a conversation about it. I reckon the key in this stuff is to helping this kid learn, how do you know that it's okay to do that? And she'll be really good at demonstrating that, because you can see I'm smiling when you come closer. I'm okay with it. I'm not backing up. I'm not getting tense. And I really like sharing this intensity with you. Other people might not, especially if they don't know all the amazing things about you and the way that you should enjoy stuff. How do they show you that? They get tense. They might back off. They might put their hands up. Shrug. Yeah, they might shrug away. And then we know, and then you want to help just develop that skill set of then just stepping back a little bit, but still engaging with them. It's because I want them to have this great interaction with you, because they'll see all the amazing stuff about you and all of those things. Yep. So I don't think it's their responsibility, but I think there's a huge opportunity to work with the primary caregivers in helping this kid develop a skill set at this that's going to help his relationships flourish more. Yeah, okay. Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. No, it's really cool. Billy and Nick, thank you for another amazing episode filled with so much goodness to help our kiddies, and also reflect on my own social skills as a child. I would love to hear Dr. Billy's wisdom and clinical experience supporting neurodivergent, autism and ADHD specifically, with social skill challenges. I have a 6 and 7-year-old who love the thought of making and keeping friends, but really struggle no matter how much scaffolding is done or how much we work on strategies every day in our home life and also with an amazing team of therapists. We've got an OT, speechy and a psych. My son, 6, never used to like kids his own age until this year in prep. Lockdowns here in Melbourne did not help him in the areas, in those areas, sadly. Now, he absolutely loves playing with his peers at his age and above. However, he has a skills gap when it comes to kids changing rules within the game and when they're playing at snack or lunchtime. Having the perception that he isn't getting his turn even when he is, and sharing the ball when playing his beloved basketball or football. Obviously being autistic and impulsive due to living with ADHD, he can be very inflexible and rigid within games, and unfortunately his peers don't understand this, nor do they have the patience for it after it happens over and over again. I know I shouldn't look to the future, but as parents we all do. And I get quite concerned about him being able to keep those social connections and friendships growing. We do so much reflective work on how certain things make people feel and focus so much on empathy. My daughter, 7, is such a sensitive and wise old soul who also lives with autism, ADHD and severe anxiety. She wants nothing more than to be everyone's friend, help everyone and just be liked. However, such big vulnerabilities within her social skills. Most mornings at drop-off, she's so excited to see her friends, but gets so caught up in her own thoughts of what to say, has ongoing thoughts, and is worried about her friends being mad at her, and gets herself into such an anxious state that she has a social shutdown. That's what we call it anyway. She can't speak, usually cries, and runs away at times, leaving her friends totally confused. As they are getting older, her friends think she's being rude. I'm beyond proud to say this year it worries her so much that she wrote her own letter about what it's like being and read it to her class. She wanted to explain that she's not being rude and really loves her peers so much, but gets overwhelmed and struggles socially. I worry about her holding down friendships also, as I know how important they are for her to have positive mental health and strengthen the ability of social connection as she grows into her teens and adult. Would love to hear your thoughts around children like mine. How can I support them and others in the community better? As always, keep doing what you're doing. You're legends. Many, many thanks.
Amazing.
Don't talk to me.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, what a beautiful story, and what amazing, is that parent is doing something phenomenally well, that daughter's doing that. So yeah, I think it's really funny. I was about 10:30 last night, I was starting to tighten up on the questions and which we were going to do, and I got an email from an occupational therapist, and I unfortunately wasn't able to use their question, but they talked about kind of neurodiversity and mentioned how have you heard about the double empathy problem? And I might answer the question for you since you can't. No, you haven't. Most people haven't. So the double empathy problem talks about how, and I think this is a challenge in lots of our relationships where they fall down, that we will struggle with understanding each other from both perspectives. And I think the challenge that we have in the neurodiversity space, and the medical model does this, is we see that there's something wrong with those kids, where actually what's happening is there's a problem in connection. And that's why there's a beautiful example of that daughter getting up and saying what it's like to be her. And it's that great opportunity. Now, she hopefully benefited a little bit from that, but all those kids that heard that story, that is a beautiful opportunity to develop a greater ability to connect with her. And that's what we want to do. Now, there's a little bit of skill stuff in both of these kids, isn't there? Like, how do we help? And ADHD, there's the kind of beautiful creativity and, vulnerability to being quite impulsive. But there's a challenge sometimes in that if you kind of interrupt your friends when they're halfway through the conversation, it can mean that they go, well, Billy just always steps in front of me and, will finish my stories for me. Yeah. So how do we support that without changing who the kid is? Autism has difficulties in it around social and communication, initiating, developing, maintaining friendships. Like, how do we think about what the specific skill gap is? But that's the only value in those labels. Anxiety is slightly different because they just become they're hypersensitive to becoming really emotionally overwhelmed, and that needs to be really addressed. And that's why it's amazing that this parent is doing this and just supporting that kid in that. But I just thought obviously you did. It's such a beautiful story, isn't it? It's that great demonstration of what it's like to be someone who struggles with that. And we should get better as an entire society of doing that.
Yeah.
It's true inclusion. And that's, as I said in the inclusion one, our kids who are different, it's storytelling is the power. That's the most powerful thing, not the stats. It's storytelling.
Yeah, amazing. Yep. Not a dry eye in the house for that one, Billy. I always scroll to the next question, hoping it's a lighter one or look for a light one really quickly. That was a great question. I really loved it. I don't know how you do your job sometimes, Billy. But anyway, hi team. I loved the latest episode. I've got 2 boys, 2.5-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I'm fortunate to be in a position to be able to stay at home with them until they go to school. I've read some parenting books, Mothering Our Boys, on boys specifically, which talk about boys developing social skills, amongst other skills. Which talk about boys developing social skills, amongst other skills, later than girls, and that having them in early education before they have these key skills can actually have a negative impact on a boy's confidence and mental health as they grow up. I know you both have your kids in daycare and talk about the positive impact on the importance of social skills. This is almost the opposite of what these other parenting experts are saying. Can there be a long-term negative impact on children, boys specifically, if they're put into early education before they have social skills? Are some skills more important than others? We're able to delay formal early learning, if necessary, for our boys until they have said skills. Is there any benefit to this? Thanks so much for all you're doing.
Great question.
Great question.
Yeah. So I'm not a parenting expert, and parenting experts have skill sets that I'm working on, which is like, lived experience and plain language and all that stuff. I think you're one, you're becoming a really powerful parenting expert because you're really good at that, and that's why you're here. I'm
a specialist up to 5.5-year-old girls.
Yeah. But do you know what I mean? It's connecting with people, understanding the perspective they're in and all that stuff. Yeah. But I'm a developmental and mental health specialist and researcher, so I can come to that question from that perspective.
Yep.
And also the lived experience. And this person says, I'm really lucky, and other people send in a lot of questions about this. There's a lot of us that have no choice about how much, especially with so many either single parents or dual parents working, that don't have, like we don't have any family around.
Sure.
The biggest people in Evie's life are the dog park amazing people, so we didn't have much of an option. Now the evidence is true. This person's got a little bit of correct information from other people about like this vulnerability. But what all the evidence shows is there's 2 different types, very quickly. There's 2 different types. We talk about early childcare, which is 0 to 3, and then we talk about preschool, which is 3 to primary school.
Yep.
Now there's 2 different things. Preschool, there's heaps of strong evidence that kids will be better prepared at school entry if they've gone to preschool.
Gotcha.
So it's really important that people don't confuse the 2. Early childcare is different, and the biggest difference is there is a vulnerability specifically, which is what these people will be talking about, in kids, especially boys, having more emotional problems and behavioural problems at school if they've spent a lot of time in early childcare.
Okay.
Which is our kids, our 4 kids. Charlie's going to be there heaps as well.
Yeah.
So do we just go, oh my God, we've got to pull them out, this is going to happen? Of course not. Well, we can't, but also, of course not. Yeah, it's not an option. No. But Annalise and I both will refuse to quit our work. We love it so much. So what the actual evidence shows is that early childcare can actually be a really positive thing, especially for language development, especially for social skills, especially for academic achievement through all of school. The difference is in how high the quality of the childcare is.
Gotcha.
And you probably want to know, what does that mean?
Yep.
It means that it is an environment where the staff are supportive, responsive, and available. The available bit goes to ratios. You have to have, when your kid is struggling, the staff can come. That helps with the emotional regulation stuff. Also, when your kid is not the one who's struggling, there is still time to have positive interactions with an adult educator in that setting. It's also really important that they're set up and have a good environment. It's safe, all that stuff, obviously, They have a good developmental curriculum, so they think about childhood development, which is what we've talked about through all episodes of this podcast, and they have a good evaluation component that sits around them. So it's really important, and that's why I jumped at the opportunity to do the partnership with the Australian Childcare Alliance around how do we skill them up, and I'm really keen to do that way more because there is a lot of variability in the quality of childcare. And how do we lift all childcare and support them? And a big part of it is we need to resource it better. You know, a lot of Scandinavian countries do this well. Educators across the board should be paid probably twice what they are because they're probably the most important professional in our society. So early childhood educators fit into that, and I'm really lucky that I get an opportunity to work with them and learn with them about that. But that's the difference. Also, watch your child. If your kid is spending a lot of time in daycare and struggles with externalizing behavior or emotional regulation, help them with it. It doesn't mean pull them out of childcare. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense because you just try and build a skill where you can or do something where you can.
Well, it's not the answer. I saw a kid the other day.
It's not the answer pulling him out.
Yeah, it's not the answer to say, well, you can't go to childcare then.
Because childcare's just surfaced something.
Yeah, help the childcare to be that environment through advocacy, through, you know, helping them out, blah, blah, blah. But also address that need in your individual child. I saw a kid the other day that years ago was told he's a teenager and he's got a lot of violent tendencies. And years ago, a specialist, told him stop doing BJJ. Yeah, exactly. I know I was like, So but also stopping him doing that. And I was like, why was that? Oh, because he was too violent is what the mum told me. And I'm like, cool, that's not the answer to that. That actually might be part of the solution to stay in that environment. But we've got to be a bit more deep in our understanding and thinking about this than just be going, childcare is bad. I don't want my kid in childcare.
Gotcha.
But that's the answer. I hope that's a helpful one. That makes you and I feel okay about how much time our kids spend in childcare.
Like you, and like heaps of other people, just doing my best. If I had my choice and didn't have to work and could do the kids thing all the time, but
I don't think that's the answer, to be fair. I don't think even if you can, I think it's really funny. Like, I think sometimes when people say, and I think it can be really good. It's like when I mentioned some comment ages back about how I wanted a kid to be in school. I don't think it's a universal rule that all kids should be in mainstream schooling. I think it's a universal rule that all kids should have opportunities to interact with and build relationships with kids their age. And school is a great conduit for that. Early childcare is a great conduit for that. Yeah,
I think we talk about this a bit off the mics, but I've sort of told you in the past, there's just always a challenge at a point in parenting. For some people, it's becoming a parent. That's just the first really, hard thing for people to actually have a kid. Then it could be when they're 1. It could be when they're 3 days old. It could be when they're 7. It could be when they're 8. I haven't had I don't think, from what I can tell, and I do this podcast every week with you to learn more, I don't think I've seen negative impacts from daycare on either of my girls yet. And so I'm like, this is okay for me right now with my kids, or it's okay for my kids. So that's why I'm like, it just kind of is what it is. My tune might have changed if I had a kid that was really struggling that even I could see, but I don't think I can see it, and I try to do this podcast to learn more about it. So that's why for me it works, and for you it works, but it has to work for both of us because, I need to work and so does my partner. That's just the other reality. Anyway,
those childcare educators for Evie early on became primary caregiving figures for her that had a really positive impact on her development. Because they had the capacity to engage with her and the time to not just be with her when she was struggling. So that's what's important. But did people just pick one bit of it and don't understand the breadth of it? There is really solid evidence for high quality childcare across the age groups of preschool, especially in vulnerable kids such as Evie, who doesn't have a lot of other caregivers in her life.
And I think there's probably a lot of parents who live in the city we live in, Melbourne, which had one of the hardest lockdowns. And what we found was, on a rant here, but there was periods during when we were coming out of lockdown where you just couldn't get educators, and you saw that it was really challenging. And that was a tough time, I think, for most daycares, where you were like, there's a lot of different educators part-time coming in. But like you said, I think we've been lucky we've landed on good ones, and I've used the guys in there to be babysitters outside of it. So we've been fortunate. So anyway, I don't know.
Totally.
Why am I ranting?
No, but it's important. Yeah, because I agree with you. But great question.
Cool. Hey, Billy and Nick, our school community is struggling to support many of our students as they are appearing immature and not age appropriate in their interactions. insert understanding of COVID impacts and context here, please. We know the loss of opportunity for socialising over nearly 2 full years has had a huge impact. Many teachers and parents are not sure how to support these children, as a mismatch between the age and stage is not one we have seen in such an obvious way in such large numbers. For teachers, it's impacting the academic focus significantly. For parents, they just seem shocked and bemused as to what to do. How can we support our profession to help to really understand the impact and need to focus on developing these skills beyond doing lip service to the issue? What is the best way to educate parents so that we can work in partnership with this group of children so impacted by lockdowns and social skills? Well, last comment was timely, wasn't it, Billy? When I was saying,
Yes,
yeah, it was tough.
Yeah, really tough.
2 years
really
here.
tough. And yeah, we're still seeing the impacts across communities
Oh, yeah,
of
you would
the
be.
impact of that on increased anxiety and lots of things. Anyway, great question, because yeah, we've got to do more than lip service, and it goes back to, again, we need to pay and support teachers better and resource them better. And yeah, my PhD was completely on this. How do we build capacity in educators to support kids with emotional and behavioural difficulties? And it's great because I got this opportunity to learn what the experiences of like really deeply. We did like 45 sessions over 6 months with
10 schools.
6 schools.
Six
We
schools.
ran 6 controls and 6 interventions, and it was really valuable, and it's given me such insight. And
Yeah.
what I found is that teachers have to aggressively be supported in pushing back against the curriculum demands and
Yep.
thinking about our role primarily is the relationships and the community we build for these kids.
Yep.
And we will go where their needs are, and we will also try and build partnerships with the families and everyone else who's in the community, the footy coaches, people like me, so that we can bring all our skill sets out to meet the needs for our kids so that they succeed collectively. It's really important that that's resourced. That's how you do it beyond lip service. You go, we're going to bring this person in, we're going to do this stuff together, we're going to build opportunities for families, and we're going to have space to drop the maths requirement if our kids are struggling from a relationship and emotional perspective.
Yep.
That's how you do it.
Yep.
Yeah, without being too
No,
soapboxy.
No, that's fine. No, I think you can comment. You've done it, and you've been in there, and you've done the research, and it's all looking great.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe we'll talk about that more. But yeah, and amazing to the schools reaching out to do stuff together.
Cool. All right. We're going to start picking up the pace, aren't we? I can tell by your voice there. We're going to start moving, aren't we? All right. We're going to start moving, people. Thank you. Question 8, Billy. Love what you guys are doing. My partner and I listened to your podcast in the episode, listen in the car with our 1-year-old, and they must enjoy it because they fall asleep within minutes. You make it so easy to understand what you both learned so much and have reassurance that we're doing the right thing. Thank you. My question for social skills: how do you help your kids that aren't your own? Example, random kid in the park. I've had a couple of instances recently where the bigger kids, 3 to 4, being quite mean and even violent towards our little one. I've tried to educate them and explain that he's a baby, but I find it really awkward when the other parent isn't really getting involved. Would love to have the confidence and kindness that both kids and parents are needing but tend to just move my kid away and leave the park altogether.
Yeah, what do you got?
Oh, tricky. You got to look at the situation. Everyone different, and just clock whether you think you can give the gentle guidance to be a bit better. But you got to really be aware of the situation you're in. And I think parents doing the most important thing is the kid's safety.
Yeah, of course.
And so take them out if you have to. That's a bummer because that doesn't look like you're getting the benefit of them being in the park. But yeah, you got to tread lightly. I reckon.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think safety trumps everything. You give an opportunity for gentle guidance to more productive pro-social play from the other kids as well. If that doesn't work because the kid can't pick it up or the other parent's not helping you, I think you've got to protect your kid from especially violence, keep them safe, but then open up a dialogue with them that is not a realistic expectation that they should have to experience. That's not good enough. Like a kid's 1, so they're young, but you protect them and say that this isn't on. That's not what's going to happen to you because you just don't want those experiences to be repeated.
Yeah.
And we've got a beautiful story ages back about one of our best mates doing that really well.
Yep.
Benny at the playground.
Yep. Question 9, Billy. Hi, Dr. I'm trying to rush now. Not a good thing for me. Hi, Dr. Billy and Nick. Love the potty. I have a question about social skills, but I think it may also lead into self-esteem at time. My 4-year-old back when she was 2.5 to 3, back when he was 2.5 to 3, was at daycare centre where the educator told him and his friends that they are the silly kids. My kid took the label as fact, and ever since I've seen him play out this with his friendship group he's formed. He is currently in 3-year-old kinder, where again he has one special friend rather than having many, and together they intentionally be the silly kids. This looks like running away, taking inside toys and hiding outside, destroying other crafts, tipping small things out on the floor. You get the picture. This also plays out in the playground when making a new friend. I overheard him say to the kid he just met, "Hey, let's be the silly kids," and becoming less than kind to other kids. I've tried explaining to him the difference between harmless silly and being unkind, and reminding him he is not a silly kid.
Yeah. So great question again. And I've said this so many times on the podcast, but I feel like it's my catchphrase is like, kids become who they hear they are. And, you know, that's the risk of narratives, because the person who said that probably didn't realise this was going to echo on for a long time and become like a dysfunctional way that this kid sees himself. Yep. So the challenge is, you know, how do we shift that? And I saw a kid in clinic. I don't think I've spoken about him before, but he's just on my mind at the moment, a while back. And I just saw him for the second appointment recently, who hasn't been to school in a long time because of how antisocial his behaviour is, and he is just the bad kid. He's been told since, his mum told me a couple of days ago, he's been told since preschool that he's the bad kid. In kinder, he was told that he was the bad kid. She got calls all the time, and he wears sunglasses. He's like my frame. He's just a, you know, thin kind of kid, like a small frame. But he sits there and postures, and he's the tough guy. I first met him with his dad, and he's getting in all these fights. People are putting on social media him getting in fights, all this stuff. And he sees his complete identity like that. He's just playing up, and he laughs and like looks around and looks for affirmation when it happens. The trick is not pushing down, you're the silly kid, filling the narrative with something positive and better that plays into their strengths, what they enjoy, all the stuff we've talked about more, and filling the space with that and push the silly kid stuff out that way. I've said to this kid in clinic, this is not who you are. I can see there's all this amazing stuff about you. And my goal with him is to learn what they are and build his narrative around that and help other people do it with me.
Yeah, I've got something sort of similar, but not the same. I've unfortunately been calling my kid a fussy eater for about 4 years, and I've just started reversing it and been really deliberate in the past month because she said someone recently, I'm a fussy eater. Yeah. And I was like, oh, shit. And she didn't eat something. This kid is capable of eating anything now, but still when doesn't want to eat something will say, I'm just a fussy eater. And now I'm just like, God, you ate everything tonight. God, you're really good. There's nothing you can't eat. And I don't know. I'm laying it on pretty thick at the moment because I'm trying to undo a bunch of years of...
No, but it is. It just shows how sensitive every kid is to the way they're spoken about.
Totally.
The way we talk about who they are.
And that's a relatively inconsequential one, but it's, I can see how the other ones, fill in the space with good stuff. With you, Billy. Hi, Nick and Billy. I have recently come across your podcast. I'm a mum of a 3-year-old neurospicy son. We live in New Zealand. I enjoyed your episodes on neurodivergent kids, and although they came out a while ago, now I was hoping to ask a question relating to the topic. My son is non-verbal, and often when we meet up with friends or bump into them when they're in the playground, they try to talk to him, maybe say hi or ask a question. He's not able to respond or take much notice. I can see the person trying to understand. So I try and fumble my way around explaining that he's nonverbal. My question is how best to explain to other parents who, most of the time, are not even aware that what neurodivergent is. I want to avoid labelling him and advocate in a way which they understand, but don't think less of him. I have to admit sometimes I avoid people or social activities because I don't want people to judge him who don't understand.
Yeah, great question again. Shout out to the New Zealand listeners.
Yeah, shout out to New Zealand listeners. Lovely. Yep.
So I think it's like our 3rd or 4th biggest listenership outside of Australia.
I think it is
NZ.
Yes.
So it's the beautiful thing. The reason this one made the cut is because this isn't about the kid changing. It's about the other kids changing. And you can't it's not a pep talk and you expect every other kid, but actually this kid will be really strong in non-verbal forms of communication and play. And
Gotcha.
just like the kid who shouts on the top of the thing, I need someone to talk to me, it's almost, I want these two kids to meet and play. Do you know what I mean? Because the other kid earlier needs to learn non-verbal skills of communication and social engagement. This kid doesn't. Other kids have an opportunity to learn. And so the key, if I was this parent or a professional that's supporting this kid, is have cues that you give to other kids about this is how my child likes to play. This is how he works. Not he doesn't talk, he can never speak, but this is the way that he communicates. This is what he likes doing, and scaffold that opportunity so that they start kind of humming together and bouncing off each other and having fun. And so much of that is non-verbal. Like I think we lean so heavily. If you think about the awkward situations you get stuck in socially, it's often because you feel like you need to speak because you're with someone. But so much of what we enjoy about being with other people is not what we say to each other, it's just being with each other. And that's an opportunity for other kids to get really good at doing that with this kid.
Yeah, this almost feels like the reverse of like where the other parent, it'd be great if the other parents would say, hey, recognising in kids struggling a bit or may struggling in a social situation, it's like, oh, what do they like to do and what are they good at? So similarly, if you're maybe this parent, you're like, oh, you know what, Billy loves to go down the slide a bit, a more complex game. And then maybe
this is the way he's really good at communicating. This is the way he shows you that he's having fun. This is the way, totally. And then the other parent can go, sweet, cool, got I'll scaffold my kid so that this is something that they really enjoy and walk away both having a good experience.
Yeah, and even if it's for a short window, kid feels successful, right? And it's like, oh, God, that was good. Like, yeah, I feel better.
Totally.
How does that make you feel?
It's not about ignoring the relative weakness. It's about making it smaller and filling it with the strength.
Yeah. Nice. I like it, Billy. Hi, Billy and Nick. I love your podcast, especially helpful when you don't want to parent the way you were but needs some appropriate alternatives. Oh, sorry, I butchered that. It's especially helpful when you don't want to parent the way you were but need some appropriate alternatives. I have a 3-year-old son. He's the youngest of 4, with 2 really social caring sisters and a brother with an intellectual disability who is also not as strong as his younger brother. At home, my 3-year-old is rough, snatches, angers quickly and doesn't show any signs of empathy. He rules the roost and pushes his weight around. Outside the house, he is reserved. Will let other kids take toys and share. My 2 questions are, which kid are we raising? The one in our house or the one we take out? When he is hurting siblings and is mostly his brother, is it okay not to give his behaviour too much attention and focus on comforting the hurt child? What's the long game? Thank you so much. I've gotten so much from your discussions.
How great is that?
That first one is so good. Which kid am I raising? The one in our house or the one we take out?
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, promote the one we take out, like the behaviour around that, and get him out more and just constantly tell him he's doing the great things. And then it's harder to spend less time at home when you've got 4 kids.
What do you do in the house?
I remind them of how good they were outside. You know, when you were out today, you did such a good job sharing at the park. You made party pies for everyone out of Tambark. That was so good. Can we try and do a little bit of that at home, mate?
Yeah, it's great.
Something like that.
It's such a good question though. And it's just, we are often at our worst as kids and adults, the place we feel the safest and in the relationships we feel the safest.
Yeah, you come home and explode as a little kid because you're comfortable in that environment.
Yeah, not just as a little kid sometimes.
As an adult,
So, it's really important to recognise that kind of will happen with a lot of kids, especially if they are more prone to those kind of emotional outbursts or what we call externalising behaviour. And I reckon you've given a beautiful answer of how to transition all the strengths that he can demonstrate out in the world outside of the house, and then how do we bring that back in?
Yeah, okay.
It segues pretty well into the hitting thing. So my actual answer to hitting is that, yes, we have a huge vulnerability in unintentionally reinforcing it because we give attention. And what happens, especially in kids who don't have a lot of language, which is where we see a lot of the peak of hitting, is that they learn that the way they get help when they're struggling because the other kid won't give them the toy or they're not getting their needs met is they hit, parent goes in. Now, there is a very basic that I think we've got a better answer, but a lot of the responses just ignore the hitting. But what I actually think is seeing that is a sign of a kid signalling they need help, going in to help them, and then recognizing that and then looking at them and going, are they dysregulated or not? If they're dysregulated, not an opportunity for skill development.
Do you address the hitting? So I've got this all the time at the moment. Kids, she's coming out of a bit, still does it. I walk in, they're not sharing, or someone's putting feet in someone's face. The little one doesn't like it, lashes out and hits. I'd love to, hey, looks like you're struggling with something, Ron. Like, what can I help you with? But do I talk about the hitting?
So I don't mind either way. The risk is that everything you give attention to, you reinforce. Yeah. So if you're going to go with the hitting, make sure there's a second step to it of what you want them doing instead. Can't just go to hitting because you're not giving the kid a pathway out. Okay. So you can go, you need to come to me for help. You need to say this to your sister. You need to do this instead. Whatever it is, and you pick what it is. It's got to be developmentally appropriate. You can't be like, I want you to negotiate what your feelings are in this space.
So Billy, rolling my eyes at the older one because I know she knows that she's doing the wrong thing, which is now just a mirror. By the way, I just getting the eye rolling back on things. It was a bad move.
Totally. I think that the challenge is that, how do I recognize my own feelings in this moment? That's a really important thing. And we talked about co-regulation in that space. Yes. The second step to hitting that we often fail at, and this is going to segue to a question later. Good. Is we do a big performance around the kid saying sorry. And the other kid who's been hit, is sitting there while there's a big but the problem is that kind of reinforces, and all the kid remembers is I felt really good about myself because everyone clapped when I said sorry, and they might actually be going, sweet, when I struggle, I hit the other kid, everyone comes in, and then a minute later, everyone's clapping and telling me how great I am. So how do we kind of recognize what's a better alternative, signal help, like all the stuff we've talked about, try and go in when they're succeeding and reinforce that. But there are still going to be times like you're experiencing when they struggle. But how do we recognize it as a signal for help, check our own emotions, and then go in and direct them towards something better if we're going to call out the hitting? Okay. That is better than just ignore.
Yeah, okay.
But ignore is better than I go in and make a dance. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I was just flicking through to make sure that the next question was the one around apologies because I think it's such a good one. I can't wait for your answer here, Billy. My question is about kids and apologies. Saying sorry is a pro-social behaviour I want my daughter, just turned 2, to have, but I'm getting lost in information about teaching this. And what age is the child capable of saying sorry? By capable, I mean they understand that they hurt somebody else and should try and make a repair for that. Second part, do you have any thoughts around forced apologies? I have read that we should not do them, but if I don't expect the kids to apologise and ask them to do so, how will they learn to do it? And by not getting your kids to apologise, other parents think you're disrespecting their kid. Oh, this is going to be great, Billy, because I think every parent gets 5 shots a day at this one. So I'm looking for some practical here.
Yeah, awesome. So we teach kids to say sorry by saying sorry to them. So that's how kids learn. All right. Saying sorry, because we say sorry to them. We role model to other people, but the most important thing we can do for kids around this is we say sorry to them, and then we explain why we're saying sorry to them. We often skip that step and we go, you need to say sorry. And then we try and explain to them. We should always explain to them why and help them understand why there's an expectation that they will say sorry in that moment. But we connect with them first, like everything. If they're really struggling, it's not a skill development opportunity like we often talk about. But if they're okay, we say that. But we build their capacity to use sorry in conversation appropriately by doing it to them.
Regularly outside of that situation.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Yeah.
It's one of those things. Change yourself before you change the world.
No. You're right. I like it.
So, have you perfected saying sorry to your kids?
I don't apologise for nothing, really.
No, but you joke about that. That is a really common thing, especially in our parents' generations, where they were like, "I will never say sorry."
Yeah, because I can tell you why. Okay, you're right. Okay, I give you that you're right, and it needs to, and I can see it. I can see how it works, and you're absolutely right. The reason we don't is if you concede a bit, it's just like you give an inch, I'm worried they're going to take a mile. So, but I understand. No, I know. Yeah. I can see, and I'm going to change my ways, Billy.
That's an old version of parenting. It's a bit outdated.
It's hard to get rid of.
If I say sorry,
well,
I'll take over.
I'll take. I can see, but no, I can see. I like, and you're talking sense. I'm loving it.
That's how you teach kids how to say sorry. The other bit, sorry, just finally, because there was a second part to that very
Apology,
quickly
yep.
about the other kid, will feel like they're being disrespected.
Yeah.
So it can sometimes not be a skill development opportunity for your kid. And it's okay to do that sometimes. Like we do this with Evie sometimes where she's done something and it's like just, she ran the scooter into Annalise's foot. I was the person who was like, yeah, of course you can do it inside. And then immediately slapped into the back of Annalise's foot.
So did you apologise in this situation?
Well, no, but I supported. Yeah, I actually did. To be 100% honest, now that you're reminding me, I did afterwards.
Yeah.
I should have done it with Evie,
Yeah.
but I was so stuck on her because, we were like, Evie needs to say sorry, but she didn't actually understand what had happened.
Yeah.
So there was no point in pressuring her. So it was about her understanding what had happened and that's okay. And she's a bit sensitive at the moment to being directed and corrected that she gets really upset. So I just was literally down the floor with her, all that stuff, and we went through it and all that stuff. So it's really important for that. But it is okay sometimes to be like, this is not for Evie to get better. This is because the other kid just felt hurt and I want to support them in that. But it's not, Evie's not going to get better. I'm doing that and making her say sorry or saying I'm sorry for her for the other kid. And that's totally fine.
Yep. I love it. I'm going to listen to this segment question on loop, just that bit, because I need to be reminded. Anyway, sorry, I just lost my way there. Okay, here we go.
2 to go.
13, yep. Sticking up for themselves. Hi, Nick and Billy. On the social skill app, my 5-year-old daughter was telling me that a boy at school was throwing puppets at her and threatened to throw a chair at her. We talked about it, but I'm never sure what to actually say or advice to give her about what we can do next time she's in a similar situation. I want her to stand up for herself, but what are the things that might work when dealing with kids like that? My first instinct is to park. My first instinct in a park, etc., would be to say something to the kid, which I know is not helpful in the long run. But goodness, my mama bear comes out in those moments. What can I tell her to do or say to keep herself safe when I'm not around? And is advice to tell a teacher? And is the advice to tell the teacher going to give her a dibby-dobber reputation as she gets older? Thanks, guys. Love your work. Not laughing, just laughing. Dibby-dobber, man. I haven't heard that since the 80s. I love it.
And for overseas people that might not know that, that's like you tell on people kind of stuff. So very quickly on these last ones. No, it's a really important thing. So as we've talked about already, like to totally understand the mum bear thing coming out and safety trumps everything. If you can, try and scaffold an opportunity for conflict resolution from the other kid, but that's not your responsibility and it's completely fine to pull that kid out. I think it's really important, and I'm going to try really hard with Evie of this, that she understands that that is not appropriate and not something that she should deal with, having stuff hurled at her or being bullied or anything like that. And it's not about the other kid. It's about that she just shouldn't experience that. And she actually should. I want the first step for her to do, especially at the age she's at now, is she seeks help.
Yep.
And I think the risk of like, I don't be a dibby-dobber and all that stuff, it often comes from a very kind of masculine, toughen up kind of perspective, is not a helpful one. And it means that so much stuff gets missed because teachers or parents can't see everything. So I want you to help seek, not to get the other kid in trouble, but to seek help because you felt stressed or you felt overwhelmed or you felt at risk. And that's the important bit with that stuff. I think that's the appropriate path to that.
Brilliant. Okay, Billy, last question. Hi, Nick and Billy. As always, love your work. In the spirit of eating the elephant one bite at a time, I have 2 questions. If you could only teach your kids one social skill, what would it be? 2, is there a crucial skill that is a building block or starter that enables others?
Yeah, that one stumped me the most out of the hundreds of questions that we got. So I kept it in. I thought it's a great one to end on, and I thought about this a lot, mainly while riding to and from work every day. What do you think? One skill. And just before I'll give you a bit of time. I think it's one of the hardest things I find in this space, especially when I do media stuff, is everyone's like, what's the top thing? Or what are the three things, or the top 5 things that all parents should know? And I'm like, oh God, there's so much more than that. But yeah, what do you think? What do you think's the most important?
I don't think this is the most important, but it's the one I'm sort of drawn to is empathy.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, great. So I think that's I've got an answer just because I didn't only have 30 seconds to think about it.
Yeah.
So I think it's seeing yourself in others.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing, because it will cover so many elements of it. If there's one thing that I could give, because it does empathy, like
That is
you've
empathy.
talked about.
Yeah.
It's conflict resolution.
Yeah.
No one asked about conflict and all that. It's so frustrating, but I can only answer what comes.
Yeah.
But that is a social skill that often the first step is understanding the perspective of others. It helps with social connection, seeing yourself in other people. What do we have in common? What would it be like to be you? It helps. We talked about it in siblings. We talked about it in friendships and all that stuff. So I think help your child at any level, and you can do this from preschool up, learn how to see themselves in others. What's it like to be that person? You know, what do we have in common? All of that stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, you can do that really purposefully, I think.
Okay.
What do you think happened for them? The other kid gets really upset and act out. What do you think he was going through? What do you guys have in common? Seeing yourself in others is a really key social skill.
Okay.
And I think it's a really good one to support. And it covers what you're talking about, which is empathy.
Yeah, I thought that was it. Okay, and building starter block in others, or if you answered both questions with one answer?
Yes, yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I thought you had. No, the answer's great. I was just like, I was lost in your explanation. I was
Sorry.
so bad at this sometimes.
No,
I'm sorry.
You're amazing at it.
Okay, no, that was brilliant, Billy. We've just snuck in under the magic 90 minutes,
was
which is
rushing.
great. Actually, we've got a 2-minute intro, which is shit. Anyway, I think we're going to get in under 90 minutes. Look, guys, it's the great questions that drive this, and that's what we love about it most. We really love when you guys do this and send through these questions. I'm always surprised with how diverse the questions are on a single topic. I've got to be honest. Like I say, how many questions could there be? Then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, other people's perspectives, understanding situations is so valuable, because it may not be mine and I'm only really focused on my day to day, but when I get this perspective from other people, it's so bloody handy. So I love it. So well done to all of you. Billy, well done to you. Some good ones there. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit more often, I reckon. I reckon you do well under a little bit of pressure.
No, thanks, Nick. It was good fun.
Awesome, guys. Thank you.
Hey, don't let your mother smell that beer on your breath. She'll take it out on me.
I don't want to see you again for the rest of my whole life. I don't want to see anybody else either.
Who is your daddy and what does he do?
Just use your best judgment. We trust you.